Join me, Matt Connarton, weekdays, 4 to 6 p.m. live for a discussion about politics where we put aside labels like liberal and conservative and have a discussion about truth and what's really happening in the world.
This hour on WMNH is proudly sponsored by CGI Business Solutions, located at 171 Londonderry Turnpike in Hooksett. Serving all your employee benefits planning, design and administration, investment and wealth management, and customized business insurance solutions. They are available at 866-841-4600 or on the web at cgibusinesssolutions.com.
You are listening to WMNH-LP, Manchester's radio, broadcasting at 95.3 megahertz frequency modulation from the top of 1000 Elm Street. Our studios are located at 1045 Elm Street and licensed to Manchester Public Television Service in Manchester, New Hampshire, USA. Contact us by email at WMNH953@gmail.com or through our website at WMNHradio.org.
Presidential campaigns are all about creating an image, a brand. You gotta have a catchy slogan, photo ops, staged events. To put it charitably, these events are about messaging. To put it bluntly, they're marketing gimmicks, and they are just as prevalent as stump speeches. A recurring goal is to make it look like you're the friendly but smart next-door neighbor. Part of the everyman routine tends to include projecting yourself as self-made. As Bill Clinton once quipped,
one of the greatest chairmen the Democratic Party ever had, Bob Strauss, used to say that every politician wants every voter to believe he was born in a log cabin he built himself.
Beer is the beverage of choice for trying to look like Joe and Jill Sixpack. Champagne? Don't even think about it. There are pictures of Hillary Clinton drinking beer, and many others. You have Scott Walker, John Kerry, the list goes on, and photos of sitting presidents, also knocking back a cool one, not unusual. You've seen photos of then President Obama, beer in hand. Same with Bill Clinton. My word, they're just like us. 2020 candidates are already chugging along.
Hold on a sec, I'm gonna get me a beer.
In this Instagram Live captured by CBS, Senator Elizabeth Warren grabbed a Michelob Ultra to celebrate her White House run. Guns are another symbol. Lots of candidates and sitting presidents, of course not all, find occasions to pose with a firearm. There's probably no better example than Obama firing a shotgun at Camp David, or 2004 presidential candidate John Kerry taking a shot, and Gerald Ford reviewing a firearm from what looks to be a velvet-lined case. Then sometimes gimmicks get awkward. Like when George H.W. Bush had a look of wonderment while scanning prices of milk, a light bulb, a bag of candy at the exhibition hall of the National Grocers Association. Now, every candidate is required to just know, flat out, the price of a gallon of milk. Some incidents are devastating, like Democratic nominee Michael Dukakis riding in a tank with a big helmet on in front of a laughing media in 1988. People still ask him about that to this day. Then there's the trap of trying to look too hip. Remember Hillary Clinton learning to nay-nay on Ellen? Occasionally, the moment can even have blowback on non-politicos, like Jimmy Fallon mussing Trump's hair in 2016. The host caught hell for months by creating a moment he thought was in good fun. As you can see, gimmicks are as American as apple pie. Come to think of it, eating a slice of homemade pie on a family farm, maybe in Iowa, that could work.
Thank you very much. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I will begin with my most important question. Did you see the Grammys? And if so, what did you think of Jennifer Lopez's performance?
Who?
J-Lo?
I don't know her.
Thank you. And now my follow-up. Will you, in fact, declare a national emergency at the southern border?
I'll sign the final papers as soon as I get into the Oval Office, and we will have a national emergency, and we will then be sued, and they will sue us in the Ninth Circuit, even though it shouldn't be there, and we will possibly get a bad ruling, and then we'll get another bad ruling, and then we'll end up in the Supreme Court.
I love this song.
And hopefully we'll get a fair shake, and we'll win in the Supreme Court, just like the ban They sued us in the Ninth Circuit, and we lost, and then we lost in the appellate division.
Sweetie.
And then we won.
Some say that you're just concocting this crisis to get the money for your wall. Well, I mean, it was a wall, and then it was a fence. What's it today? Some chicken wire and an ADT security decal?
No.
Couple of Doberman pinchers and a sprinkler? Thank you.
You're fake news.
Some say that you're just fear-mongering and using inflated statistics to help your own agenda.
Not too many people have said that.
Some say that you're full of and others will agree that you're just fomenting fear and hate with your hyperbole.
Drugs and gangs and people, it's an invasion.
Now push has come to shove. You shut down the gov just to try and get your way.
I didn't need to do this.
Your only interest is campaign promises. Can we believe a word you say?
No.
Girl, you're at an impasse. Now they're gonna sue your ass, but you just keep pushing me.
You don't have a border, you don't have a country.
Border lies, freaking us out while you traumatize. All the stats you claim you've been shown back in your border lies. Border lies. The rate for distracting from Russian ties. More insulting than your skin tone. Talking about border lies.
Sir, you told us that Mexico would reimburse us for the wall. Is it true that you will allow them to pay entirely with 20% off coupons from Bed Bath & Beyond?
Where the hell did that come from?
I have my sources. My mom posted it on Facebook.
Well, he's quick to rush to racist, rash decisions on a whim.
I could do the wall over a longer period of time. I didn't need to do this.
But the only national emergency we have is him.
And by the way, Trump is crazy.
He dupes and he deceives, but still his base believes the MAGA mantras he repeats.
Make America great again.
He said that Mexico would pay for it if so, and I'd sure like to see your receipts.
No.
Girl, hit that Adderall. Take a sniff and go get your border wall. And stop being such a tease.
We're getting it done.
Border lies. Even Ann Coulter is getting wise. You're just walking like a parrot, echoing border lies. Border lies. Let's just hope your base doesn't recognize. You're just dangling a carrot, rest up and border lies.
Sorry. Guess I got a little carried away.
Let's not talk about it.
Okay. It's too bad Mike Pence is in here. He loves Madonna.
I don't know her.
Big political headline this morning. President Trump declaring a national emergency in order to fund his border wall.
Before leaving for Florida for the weekend, Trump explained his decision in a morning Rose Garden event that went off the rails rather quickly.
We will have a national emergency.
1 Adam 12, 1 Adam 12, a 211 in progress.
Emergency warning, alien approaching.
So declaring a national emergency so he can try to route billions from elsewhere in our government to his wall.
I could do the wall over a longer period of time. I didn't need to do this.
I didn't want to do it.
But I'd rather do it much faster.
Didn't want to
and the only reason we're up here talking about this is because of the election.
In the inevitable legal challenges to this declaration.
And we will possibly get a bad ruling, and then we'll get another bad ruling, and then we'll end up in the Supreme Court, and hopefully we'll get a fair shake, and we'll win in the Supreme Court, just like the band.
Sound your alarm bell. Warning, warning.
We will have a national emergency.
Silence, you camping car. Danger, danger. We are at DEFCON 1.
Here's somebody without a problem.
It's like I picked the wrong week. Quit amphetamines. sit down, that old Trump, they don't know what to do. Never happened.
And we will then be sued, and they will sue us in the Ninth Circuit, even though it shouldn't be there, and we will possibly get a bad ruling, and then we'll get another bad ruling, and then we'll end up in the Supreme Court, and hopefully we'll get a fair shake, and we'll win in the Supreme Court, just like the ban. They sued us in the Ninth Circuit, and we lost, and then we lost in the appellate division, and then we went to the Supreme Court, and we won.
Oh yeah, it's the doom rock, the metal version of the theme song. Here on Matt Connarton Unleashed in the afternoon. Welcome everybody. We are live on WMNH 95.3 FM, emanating from beautiful and bright, sunny downtown Manchester. Nice to have a sunny day. Yesterday was kind of dreary. So it's nice to, that's like the sort of the Sabbath version of my intro music. Anyway, welcome everybody. I wasn't expecting that. Let's see. Of course, we're also on channel 97 Comcast if you're in the Manchester area, and on Facebook via Facebook Live on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. And let's see, streaming at WMNHradio.org. And so welcome. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I hope everyone had a good President's Day. I had a good President's Day. Today is Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. This is Matt Connarton Unleashed. The number to call is 603-250-6007. I did see someone was calling a moment ago, so caller, if you'd like to try back, go ahead. It's a little awkward to try to answer the call while all this fun and frolic is happening. And by fun and frolic, I mean, you know, the intro to the show. I like to play some various sound clips. I love Randy Rainbow, by the way. I'm a big fan of Randy Rainbow and his new song about the border there. Quite fun. A little bit of a takeoff on a little song called Borderline by Madonna that some of you may remember. Let's see. So we got a lot of activity in the Facebook Live chat already. I see Jenny in there. Hello. Fred Bonig from thedailyripple.org is in the Facebook Live chat. Dr. Jeff Cassell. Audrey Drake is there. Hello, Audrey. I don't think I've seen you show up in there before. And Drew DeShepard joins us in there. Now, Drew, if I'm not mistaken, if this is the same Drew, a couple of years ago, I mean, it's been at least 2 years now. No, it'll be 2 years that I've been doing this radio show here at WMNH in April 11th, if I'm not mistaken. So it was probably closer to 3 years, or at least 2.5 years ago now. Where does the time go? That Drew was a guest on my show, my television show that I used to do. He came on with a politician from the Seacoast area, Mr. Sean Michelonis, and there was this whole big saga going on, and you know, Drew and I are Facebook friends, but other than that, I don't really know him. But Drew, you're welcome. I know if you're still in the area. Last I knew you were living around here. You're welcome to pop in sometime, join me on the show. Yeah, that brings back some memories. So hello to Drew. Let's see. So again, that is one of the ways that you can interact on the program, and the other is to give me a call, 603-250-6007. Although I am going to play some pre-recorded audio in a moment of an interview that was done just last night. So if that caller who is trying to get through wants to call back, do it quick, because I'm going to be playing this in a moment. But we have so much to discuss, as is always the case after a long weekend. It was President's Day weekend. Congratulations to anyone who might have bought a new vehicle, or if you sell cars, congratulations to anyone who may have sold a vehicle yesterday, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, President's Day to auto dealerships is sort of like Black Friday is to retail. I think it's like the biggest day of the year, because I remember Scumpy saying something about that. Our friend Jeff Scumpy Lorenz, who is a very, very talented gentleman, and he occasionally joins us on the show and also is on the morning show sometimes. But, he's an actor, he's a musician, he's got a lot going on. But he also sells cars. So I hope he had a very successful weekend. And we'll go ahead and grab this call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
Hey, Matt, Mike Doyle.
Mr. Mike Doyle, how are you, sir?
Good, how you been? Happy President's Day weekend, my friend.
Yes, to you as well. Did you buy a new vehicle?
I was wondering if I wanted to just read you something real quick.
Sure.
And I was wondering if you read the Sunday paper yesterday by any chance, the Sunday News.
Like an actual newspaper? Like
yeah, that's right. You're a modern guy. You wouldn't read the newspaper.
Oh my goodness,
I'm the old
please.
fogey that still gets it delivered in his mailbox.
Wow.
Okay. On the front of the Sunday News yesterday.
Yes.
This is for those. Just let me read these statistics.
Mm-hmm.
This is for those who continue to say that we don't have a crisis in this company at the border. Okay?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Let me just read these to you.
Okay.
Now we're talking about little old New Hampshire here.
Uh-huh.
We're not talking about New York, Massachusetts, California.
Oh, we have a crisis.
These are New Hampshire by the numbers in 2018.
We have a crisis at the New Hampshire border? You talking about all these people from Massachusetts who come up here? I don't like them either.
Right. Well, listen to this.
Okay. I'm kidding.
In 2018, these are under the New Hampshire, where was it? By the U.S. Attorney's Office in 2018, the number of federal prison sentences for major trafficking offenses publicly announced in the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Hampshire in 2018, 58. That's a little over one a week.
Okay.
The number of months these defendants got, 4,400. That doesn't matter. Listen to this. The amount of fentanyl seized in one day on April 9th, 2018, during the execution of a search warrant on a trafficking organization led by Sergio Martinez, 66 pounds. That was on one day.
Mm-hmm.
Number of potentially lethal doses seized during that raid, 30 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember reading about this online.
Lethal doses of fentanyl were seized on one day in the state of New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
It goes on to give 2 milligrams is enough to kill you. Estimated street price is $3 a baggie. Number of baggies. 44 pounds of heroin were seized by the Marquette organization distributed in New Hampshire in 2018. 2.6 million is the organizational income for last year estimated for this organization that sells drugs in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure
373 is the number of overdoses in New Hampshire in 2018.
I'm glad it's illegal, by the way. This war on drugs is going great. But yeah, go on.
No, that's about it. But now multiply that by little old New Hampshire.
Uh-huh.
And then multiply that by what didn't we catch. This is just the stuff we caught.
Connect the dots for me, Mike. I don't know how this proves as a crisis at the southern border. I'm not following you.
Most people will tell you that a large percentage, and nobody can give you the exact number, but most people can tell you a large percenter comes from the southern border of the United States, whether it be through the port of entry, which they try to get through, or they try to get through where fences and borders aren't as restrictive, and they can get through with mules or with young men who carry it in backpacks or whatever.
Well, the Border Patrol...
It doesn't take a lot to carry 66 pounds of fentanyl in a backpack.
Well, the Border Patrol...
Which has the lethal dose of 30 million people.
Yeah.
In 66 pounds of fentanyl.
Well, the Border Patrol's own numbers show that most of this is coming through legal ports of entry. But personally, I oppose the drug
war.
What
is most? Keep in
I
mind, most is coming through legal port of entry because that's where we catch people coming through, so we can document it. We have trouble documenting the kids that don't get caught that are coming through on the places where there isn't a port of entry, where there isn't a lot of officers, and there's no real borders to stop them. Wouldn't you assume that? Wouldn't you assume if you're a drug dealer,
you're making a lot of
assumptions.
assumptions.
To give a kid a backpack of 100 pounds of fentanyl and say, here's $1,000. You'll meet a guy on the other side of the border in Arizona, give him the backpack, versus having the kid ride his bike through the port of entry or a motorcycle Which way do you think the guy would choose?
Well, hopefully one of these days the Trump administration will release some sort of documents and statistics that prove that that's the root of the problem. But even if it is, I don't support the drug war. I'd rather make it legal and end the whole underground black market of drugs in general, because what we've done doesn't work.
You'd rather make fentanyl legal?
I actually would. I'm at the point now I would like to, or at the very least, decriminalize it. Because what we're doing now doesn't work. I'd like to follow the Portugal model. What they've done has been spectacularly successful, and it's actually driven down the use of drugs. So
I can't believe you just said that. You're talking about a drug where you could possibly breathe it in and die.
Right.
And you're saying we should make it legal. We should put it out on the streets.
You're right.
Around our children.
No, I'm not saying we should put it out on the streets around our children, but guess what? It's illegal, and it ends up on the streets around our children. So
that means we should stop doing it. We should stop trying to stop it.
No, I didn't. No, that's not what I said. I didn't say we should. I just said we should not do what we've been doing, which is continue to fight this failed drug war. It's a failed policy. Let's do what Portugal did. What they have done has worked. And by the way, they didn't go full legal. There's a big misunderstanding about that. Some people talk about Portugal and think that they just did a full legalization. They did not. They decriminalized hard drugs. And it's gone very, very well for them, and I would like to do something similar. This decades-old drug war is, well, actually, it's not a complete waste because there are a lot of people who profit from it. So let's put the drug dealers out of business. You know, you decriminalize it, you put these dealers out of business with their drug mules and all this. That's how you solve this.
I can't believe you're saying that. I can't believe it. You're a pretty rational guy usually.
How often do you listen to the show?
I can't believe you're saying let crack, heroin, let it all come in. Come on in.
That's not what I said.
Come on, jump in the pool. Everything's fine.
You're mischaracterizing my.
You're
mischaracterizing my position. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not. You're making it sound like let's everybody do crack and heroin. That's not what I'm saying, Mike. But this drug war is not working. At least it's not working for us. It is working for the people who profit from it. It is working for the drug cartels, isn't it? Because when you make something illegal and you create a huge underground market for it, there's a lot of opportunity there for people who want to traffic in that. At least if you decriminalize it and try to control it in some way, this isn't working. Does it seem like it's working to you? If the drug war is such a big success, why is all this fentanyl being seized to begin with?
It has nothing to do with the business end of it. You can't have that around our. You can't have that around our society.
It's here. Mike, it's here. It's already here, Mike. It's already here.
I can't believe you're saying that. I can't believe your rationale is to.
Dude,
you know what?
This isn't a new position for me.
There's no way to stop them, so let's join them.
I'm not saying join them. And I'm not even saying there's no way to stop them. But, well, there is no way to stop them completely. But you can certainly cut it down by doing some reasonable things that other countries have done. What we've done doesn't work.
Put up borders. Like put up border walls.
Dude, if you could somehow...
It's been successful in 100 other countries, but for some reason it's not successful here. And for some reason, 6 years ago, when all these politicians were in Obama's front pocket, and they all said, "Oh, we need walls. We definitely. Oh, Obama wants walls. Yeah, let's put up walls." Now that Trump's in, oh, we don't need a wall. It's against the law. He's breaking the law. All he's trying to do is try to slow down the influx of drugs coming in this country. Why can't people take apart the side that you hate him so much and just put to the side that he's making an attempt at slowing down drugs coming into the country?
No,
Couldn't it just be that simple?
No, he's just trying to get reelected because he made a promise that he was going to build a wall, and he didn't expect to win. And he didn't expect to
What are you doing?
And then he won, and he's like, "Oh no, now I got to figure out a way to do this."
Oh, you're kidding me. Anyways, all right. Well, I just wanted to throw that out there.
All right, Mike.
I didn't think there'd be any way around that article, but you did find one. You found one. Doesn't make any sense, but you did find a way out.
Well,
it's all a political thing, and it has nothing to do with the guy just wants to try to slow down the influx of these extremely harmful drugs.
If I thought it would work.
66 pounds of fentanyl.
Yeah. If I thought it would work, I'd be all for it.
That's a little bigger. Those of you who own dogs, that's a little bigger than a 50-pound bag of dog food. That's enough to kill 30 million people.
Mm-hmm.
a little bigger than a bag of dog food,
Yeah.
50-pound bag.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to keep it out of the country. He's trying to slow it down if he can, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And everybody else thinks it's political, and he made a promise, and he made that promise because he knows it's an issue. And everybody else, like Obama, hid from it. But anyway, hey, another good show as usual. Can't wait to hear your show.
All right, Mike.
Have a good one.
All right, thanks, Mike. I appreciate the call. Take care.
Yep.
All right, that was Mike Doyle. And by the way, you can often hear Mike Doyle on. Well, I don't know. I don't think he goes on as often as he used to, but you can hear Mike Doyle on the morning show. Actually, yesterday when we were, I think it was, it must have been, it was yesterday because yesterday we were off. So we had replays of the shows, and I think I didn't catch the whole thing, but I think the replay of the morning show was when Mike Doyle told that story about something that happened to him recently that was pretty interesting, and it's like, wow. So anyway, let's see. I think what we'll do is I'll go ahead and play this interview for you that we did last night. So last night I called into a studio in Columbus, Ohio. Mr. Brian Brawdy was there. Brian has been on the show before via phone. In fact, a particularly epic moment on the show involving John Hopwood happened during one of Brian Brawdy's calls. Some of you might recall. We won't rehash all that, but if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. So always a good time with Brian. He hosts a popular show online called All Natural Being. But so I called into Brian's show last night. He was on the air online in his studio in Columbus, and together he and I interviewed a gentleman named Rob Arnaudin, or Arnaud. I think it's Arnaudin. I think I'm saying his last name correctly. He's the co-host of a show called Rob and Slim, which is a show that's online, a really great podcast. You can find it wherever you find that stuff. They're on Podbean and wherever else, and really, really funny. They do a live show Wednesday nights, starting at 6 p.m. online, and they're on for a few hours, and it's a lot of fun. So Brian and I together, we got together with Rob, who also called in, and we interviewed him about his show. We learned a lot, and I part of what's fun about this is, I've known Brian for several years now, and I don't think I've ever heard him laugh as hard as he did during our conversation with Rob from Rob and Slim. So I'm going to share that with you. And I did have to do a little light editing to just make sure it was appropriate for the FM terrestrial radio and so forth. But it's not very long, but we'll play this, and then when we come back, we'll catch up on some other stuff. As always, there are a million different things going on in the news. But all right, but here it is. This is Brian Brawdy and I interviewing Rob from the Rob and Slim Show. I hope you enjoy this as much as we did.
It's Rob from Rob and Slim.
Hey, Rob, how are you, brother?
Hey, great. How you guys doing?
Good, thank you. Matt, can you hear? I want to make sure everyone's got the right number and everyone can hear everybody. Matt, can you hear Rob? Rob, say hello to Matt.
Yeah.
Great.
No, I can hear Rob loud and clear, and I'm looking back at my messages, and I can confirm that
Brian's
Rob,
an idiot.
I apologize. I gave you the wrong number.
I thought so.
Hey, Rob, here's what we're all willing to admit. Just blame the guy with the brain tumor. Right? If there's heavy lifting involved.
I just blame Slim.
Yeah,
I just blame him for everything.
I don't have a Slim, right? So I just blame the golf ball size brain tumor. I will tell you quickly, the other day the neighbors came up to me and go, we've had like 7 feet of snow, and you're supposed to shovel your sidewalks. I go, my doctor won't allow me to lift more than a gallon of milk. And they go, well, you got 5 days. So I looked down, I pulled up the weather, and I go, it's supposed to be 54 degrees here tomorrow. I'll let Mother Nature shovel the sidewalk. She knows how to lift with the knees. Like, I'm going to get out and shovel snow. They say, well, you only have 5 days before you get a ticket. Well, I do have that hole in my wallpaper in the studio. I was trying to figure out what I would use to fill up that hole, so please keep the tickets coming. But in any event, so that's the story of my life. Rob, okay, enough about me.
That?
Yeah, they give you a ticket. Right? Like some would-be dog walker's going to slip and fall in 7 feet of snow. Look, if your dog needs to go out in 7 feet of snow and has a tough time, get something other than a poodle. 7 feet of snow, that's what Great Danes are made for. That's what, get yourself a Rottweiler, a dog that should have like a little flask of whiskey under its neck.
Get a husky, yeah.
Get a husky. Exactly, that's all I'm saying. If there's 7 feet of snow, put the dog in the hamster cage where it belongs. And leave everybody else alone. You're going to give me a ticket because I don't shovel snow. I'm injured. I'm wounded. I'm fragile. All right, Rob, enough about me. So, Matt, you take it. Poor Rob's going, what the hell did I get into? He's going to blame Slim.
I've been in much worse. I've been in much worse, trust me.
He was going to blame Slim. He goes, that damn Slim. He made me call in.
Yes.
All right, so I'm sorry, guys. You two take it away. I'm going to just sit here by myself.
Oh, okay. Well, Rob, tell us about, for those who don't know, for the uninitiated, tell us about the Rob and Slim show and how long you guys have been on the air, and just kind of give us the rundown.
We've been on doing this show about 5 years. We did another show previously with Slim's cousin, but Slim's cousin was a dud, and he just was not funny and didn't add anything to the show. So I was like, dude, you got to get rid of him. Or do you want me to? And, like, the next thing I know, Slim messages me. He's like, I fired my cousin. So I'm like, all right, dude. Okay. So Slim is cutthroat for the show.
Wow.
And then we started doing, after that, we started the Rob and Slim show. And, we've been going ever since. I built it up from nothing. And we do about 4 hours, like an hour and a half of news and business segments. And then we do, like, 4 half-hour interviews every show.
Wow, God, love you.
Yeah, the interviews are great, and I love. Well, what's particularly great is occasionally, and Brian, I don't know if you've had a chance to check out the show, but like you guys will do these interviews where it's not even you guys; it's these characters that you've created, and those are the best.
I was just gonna say that we got a new one coming in a couple weeks called Mr. Ron's Neighborhood, where our guy Flambeau does this character Ron, and like you said, I always pitch these like fake shows to these certain websites to get guests. We've done Ron and Cheese, we've done Frankie and the Driz, and our latest one before this was Red, White, and You, and it was a political show, but it got a little crazy. The guests were nuts, and so I started this new one, Mr. Ron's Neighborhood, for Flambeau to do Ron, and then me and Slim could do whatever characters we want.
Yeah, I'm not that talented. That sounds great. Right? I'm barely lucky to get through as me. Like Lee Rowley from Cop That Speaks does Fallout Bob, and he did this French guy that got lost in the airport the other day. But Rob, I can't do characters. So God love your brother.
You got it. You got to come up with some characters, even if they're bad. Even if they're bad. That's why I got Slim.
Oh, well, how does it go at family reunions when he goes back and finds out that everyone fingers him as the guy that fired his cousin?
I don't know. I don't know if they all love it or I don't know. He's got a strange family, so.
Maybe they're all saying, like, look, when he was on your show, at least he wasn't bugging us. Thanks, Slim. Now you cut him loose and he's calling us all the time like he's still on air. Could be. I never can tell.
Yeah, now I'm a little worried about this whole blaming everything on Slim. It sounds like if he's so cutthroat.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't mean Slim. I don't know what I'm thinking. And I'm coming to you live from Tampa, Florida. Yeah, just so you know.
You're the emperor. You're the emperor, Matt.
That's true.
That's true.
You can cut Slim. You can cut Slim. Yeah, it's all up to you, my friend.
So, Rob, can I ask you?
Too, though, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, brother. It's got to take a lot of pre-production. Like, I'm really fortunate where I come down, like, literally 10 minutes before I have to go on, and I just blather on about some, inane concept. But so I'd have to learn from you. How many hours does it take you to field a show? Like, if you're coming up with...
It's like the rest of my week, pretty much.
Okay.
Like, I work, I spend time with my girl, and then it's show. That's pretty much it. When I have my kids for the summer and for breaks, we take a break from the show. But it's a lot, dude. I do hours. Certain nights I write the scripts for the bits we do, like Too Many Rapes, which is it's a serial drama about prison rape, which is it sounds horrible. It sounds horrible, but it's really funny.
I know.
And now we're in outer space. And I also like finding the news stories and booking the guests and confirming the guests, and it's a lot of work.
So, Rob, can I ask, do you do like a mastermind? Everyone's busy now on the internet selling mastermind classes and meetups and this and that. I think I could learn a ton if you were to give like an online class about how you do all that. Because like I'm usually calling people, begging them to call in or come online or do whatever else. And most of my stick is just impromptu, right? I never know what I'm going to say before I say it. But
even my guest stuff, though, like I spend the night before the show on Tuesday, I do like hours of guest stuff. I spend about a half an hour each guest.
Okay.
Just going through their bios and all, their IMDb's or whatever they got, their websites and everything, just coming up with questions and all sorts of things.
God, well, I could stand to learn from you. So if you have like an e-book or a mastermind class or anything coming out, I would love to learn from you because I don't have any of that brilliance. I don't have any of those street smarts.
I was going to come up with a book. I was going to do a book called like Potteria, like instead of diarrhea, Potteria. And it was just going to be everything I do, everything Slim does. And I just never, it's so much work to actually sit down and like get that together. But I'd love to one day.
Very cool. Well, I'll be the first one to sign up for it. I could learn to use I could use that for sure. I could learn from that.
And piss people off that they listen to every word. That's the thing. Make enemies because they listen more than the people that love you. Just like Howard said back in the day, it is so true. So true.
Oh, Rob, you were the wrong guy for me to talk to tonight, huh, Matt?
What's that, Brian?
I said Rob was the wrong guy for me to talk to tonight because I'm already wired, Rob, about all kinds of stuff going on in the news. And I could make enemies like you wouldn't believe, brother. So now that you've kind of been the wind beneath my wings, I'm like, all right, let's wrap this up. I got to go offend a couple hundred people, right?
It's true. You get rewarded for pissing people off.
God love you, Rob. God love you. Bring it in for a big on-air hug. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's publicity. It's the best thing you can do.
Well, people will hate listen. You know, people.
Sure.
I mean, you know, you'll have people who love you, and you'll have people who love to hate you.
Right.
You know,
Sure.
it's just. You know, I always say, like, I have an axiom. I always say, I'd rather be loved than hated, but I'd rather be hated than ignored.
Right.
You know,
Hate is just as strong as emotions.
Yeah. Well, my family listens. I mean, as far as listeners that hate me, my family listens. I'll see my mother-in-law. I'll see my mother-in-law from time to time come in the feed, and I know it only pisses her off when I call her out by name, right? Because I think they think you can slide in over on Facebook, and their name only comes up green. But they don't actually comment, but Facebook like outs them, right? So whenever you come in to watch it on Facebook Live, it outs them, and I call her out by name, and you know, that's another.
For real?
That's another tough family reunion.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, well, Matt, Rob, and I are here to tell you we're going to write a book. Slim's going to be the editor, but we're writing a book on how to be unwelcome at your own family reunion. Right? And the quickest way is to piss off your mother-in-law, right? Call her out by name. And you know, Rob, she's hate listening. Right? It's not like she's running around with my bumper sticker on her car. Let's call it out for what it is. Yeah, right. It's a hate listening.
I had this guy recently, Mike the Can Man. If you want, I could contact him and get, or I can give you his contact. You could have him on. He'll hate you if you laugh at him. He will troll you. He'll hate you. He'll
great!
Every show.
Oh, thank you. Was he any relation to Cellophane John? Have you ever heard of this troll named Cellophane John?
No.
No, you haven't yet. Okay, maybe there's something there. I don't know, Matt. We'll have to conduct an investigation.
I need to hook you guys up. Yes, Rob, I need to hook you up with Cellophane John.
Cellophane John and his sidekick, Cellophane Jane.
Ooh,
yeah.
They got
they're a tag team.
Wow.
Indeed. Wow.
Oh, man, Rob, this has made my night. Thank you, Rob. I seriously, I was just talking to Matt before he gave you the wrong number. Or right, we had a hard time going in. I was just talking to him, with everything going on in the news, that my head just wants to explode. Right? So maybe you calling in tonight, maybe that's my ticket out of here of all natural being. What a bunch of bunk. But in any event, I digress. I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead. This is why I gave up alcohol.
No.
This is why I gave up alcohol.
Quite all right. What do you guys, Rob? What do you guys have coming up this week on the show?
This week I have a Valentine's episode of Too Many Rapes, which is called the same Valentine's Day Massacre. As usual, it's got Ryderdoll at Flirt Ryderdoll on Twitter. At Spicoli TV, they're voice actors that do parts in it, and it's me, Slim, and Flambeau. We'll be doing that. I got a new, I don't know if you heard last week, I did, usually do, like, the Driz things, where Slim does the Driz character, and he sings, like, he'll read, like, lyrics. I started Frankie Sing. So my character, Frankie Tubesteaks, I've been doing, songs, too. So I got that this week, which is going to be a good one.
That sounds great.
I have a couple. The guest I have is his name is Jack from the Just Conversations pod. I have a YouTuber named Matthew Santoro, a podcast called A Brew With You, and I don't know if you guys were ever Opie and Anthony fans, but I have Bobo.
Oh, wow.
You have Bobo from Opie and Anthony coming on?
Yeah, he's going to be on this week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's very cool, because he's still kicking around. Like, doesn't he go on the Anthony Cumia show still?
Yeah, he still goes on there. He just had a Christmas album drop, so yeah, I'm excited to talk to Bobo.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, wow. Huh, that's wild. That's great. Well, good for you.
Yeah, thank you. And and then the usual drizzle news and Slim Celebrity Gossip. That is another great one I love, Slim Celebrity Gossip and News, because he doesn't even know the people. He can't read names. He can't read. So Slim doing like celebrity news is amazing.
Wow.
Oh, that is too much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I nailed it about, I don't know, a couple seasons ago, like, just how to do the segments, how to do the, each half hour is different, different things, and it's just, it's like the best formula.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
if I could ask,
it's kind of constructed like a morning. Oh,
I'm sorry. No,
Brian,
go
what?
right. No, Matt. Please go right ahead. I'm just fascinated.
Oh, no.
I just want to learn how he got into it. Why did he do it? You know what I mean? All that. I'm just fascinated by it. But please go ahead.
I've always been a fan of. Sorry, guys.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's kind of like, because you were a fan of morning radio, right? Because it's kind of constructed like a morning show. Like an Opie and
absolutely like that.
Show.
I used to work in radio, too. I worked at a station called The Rat up in Belmar, New Jersey, so I worked there for a couple of years, so I got fired. And, yeah, I just always loved radio, always loved talk radio especially.
Well, yeah, you got to do a mastermind or some kind of group. I would join your group to come on and do it because, for me, it was my. No, I don't love anything about radio, but I have to tell you that after all these surgeries, I now know that I have a face for radio. So I had to leave TV. I had to leave.
Are you a programming director, Brian?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, and I'm a struggling waiter. My real main goal in life is to wait tables. So in the interim, I decided to do morning call-in radio shows. And someone said the other day, well, you have more head scars than most Vikings. And I go, thank you. That's why I'm doing radio, guys. And of course,
how did you know? How did you when you mentioned the brain tumor? How did you realize like that you had that?
Oh, total fluke, brother. A doctor says, well, that's not normal, but you're in great health. You have nothing for your age. You don't take any medication. There's nothing wrong with you. But he goes, just to be safe, let's send you for an MRI. And 11 hours later, I was under the knife. They found a golf ball-sized brain tumor, and he goes, yeah, I'm thinking this might be causing some of the trouble. And they ran me in for the surgery, and they sprung a leak, and they had to put me on a spinal tap for a month, staring up at the ceiling in the hospital, and they still couldn't plug the leak. So then they figured, let's just keep doing surgeries on this boy. So then they gave me a shunt. We didn't talk about me, but so in any event, I got into doing radio because I was like, "There's no one gonna hire. You've got more scars than like a road atlas. They're not gonna hire you."
You wear what is it? A fedora or
I do.
something.
Oh, believe me, I used to wear hats all the time, and people go, "Well, why do you always wear hats, sunglasses, this and that?" And I go, "Because I scared little kids." I'll tell you, Rob, to be honest with you, because when I had this, they gave me a shunt, which means they put like another golf ball on the top of my head, the shunt, and it gave me an appreciation for big-breasted women who, this never happened to the three of us, I know, but I've heard guys talk about, they'll be talking to women, and the women motion, they go, up here, my eyes, they're up here, and I'd be out in public, and I'd go to people, excuse me, down here, my eyes are down here. People would be having conversations with the top of, just looking at my shunt. And I'd notice them.
Just like tiptoeing up, like standing high, taller to like get a better look. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, get a peach crate. I started bringing my own step-up ladder. Oh, here, come on, just step up. I'm waiting on the bus. Just step right up, get yourself a good look. But that's what happened to me. I'm sorry, Matt.
You get some tattoos, like a SoundCloud rapper.
Oh, you know what, my brother?
I mean, Rob?
Yeah, my brother wanted me to get a big horseshoe one that said "perforate here." So, all right, I'll be quiet. So, Matt, what else is going? Rob, I'm fascinated. I cannot wait to hear your show. And you've rekindled my desire to do two things: make enemies. So I'm a lifelong fan because of that, and two, just the work ethic that you bring to it. God love you. I'm a huge fan. Just so you know.
Thank you, brother.
Matt, I'm sorry. I'll be quiet now. I keep saying I'll be quiet, but
No, it's all good. I am curious why Rob got fired from that station.
Oh, it is just as you've heard on like Opie and Anthony. What I was doing, I did the morning show like once a week with this guy Carl, and I had my own late night show with my buddy Derek, and we started getting gigs where like they were sending us to a bar or somewhere to host a gig and all that kind of stuff. So we were moving up pretty quickly, me and Derek. And it just seems like a lot of people were not feeling that jealous. They've been there for 10 years and still, scrubbing toilets type of thing. So Derek was going to pick me up for the gig, and the van keys were missing. All of a sudden, the van keys are missing. We were pretty sure somebody did it on purpose. But so it took him forever to find them, and he was late picking me up. We were late getting there. So the club owner was such a dick. He was so insulted. And then he was just a dick to us all night, and it was kind of like I went up on stage after already like failing, and the whole thing bombed. The whole gig bombed. The guy was mad that we were sent and not like bigger, talent at the station and all sorts of stuff. So what happened was this guy was so pissed that he pulled 2 weeks worth of advertising with the station.
Ooh.
So like $20,000 or something this guy kept from them, and they fired me because of it. It was just like set up for failure. Set up for failure.
There you go. I love stories like that. I mean, it's a bummer what happened to Rob from the Rob and Slim show there, but I love those kind of radio war stories, if you will. That's great stuff. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. That was we recorded that last night via phone. That was Brian Brawdy and I interviewing Rob from the Rob and Slim show, which is a very popular podcast online. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. So, but what's kind of cool is too about that discussion is, you learn a little bit if it's something you're thinking about getting into, because podcasting is a very, very big thing nowadays. It's like I heard some comedian say recently about when you're having your first kid, there's a lot to think about. Obviously, you think about the name of the kid and what hospital the baby will be delivered at, and where you want to go for Lamaze classes, and what the name and the subject matter of their podcast will be. And I thought that was a pretty good joke. Anyway, so but we learned a lot about how just how much work it is to do like a really successful podcast. And this show, before I had the honor and privilege of being able to come here and do this at WMNH, I had started it years ago as a podcast online. And I know that same for Ben Dion from the Weekly Dion. He started his show online as a podcast, and then he had the opportunity to do it live here. He's on, of course, Thursdays at 6 p.m. immediately following this show. And, it's and of course, all the shows that we do here at WMNH, they also go up in podcast form, if you will, after they air live at WMNHradio.org. We put them up on Podbean, so they're available for you to listen to, peruse, enjoy at your leisure, because we live in such an on-demand world. So, I mean, the big advantage of doing a show like this live is, of course, we can take live calls, and I'll take your call at 603-250-6007 if you feel like chiming in on anything today. But of course, today you kind of have the best of both worlds. You do it live, you can interact with the audience, and then you can put it up online, and everybody can get it when they want to get it. But oh my goodness, Bob Burrell joins us in the Facebook live chat. So Bob, I haven't seen Bob in a really long time. Bobby B is what we used to call him back when he and I worked together many, many years ago at a place called Strawberries, which was on Loudon Road in Concord. And some of you might remember Strawberries. Peter White from The Morning Show with Peter White, I've heard him talk on The Morning Show about how he worked at Record Town in high school. Or it was either in high school or right after high school or maybe both. I've heard Pete talk about that. And Record Town, at the time, they were competitors with Strawberries. And the company that owned Record Town eventually bought Strawberries. But I just based on the timeline that I've heard Pete talk about, I don't think he was still working for the company at that point. But eventually they became one. And of course, Strawberries is gone now because they ended up converting all those to. They ended up either converting or closing all those locations because they wanted to convert them to all have the same name. But a lot of those locations closed because this was, when I worked there, because I didn't work there in high school, I worked there later. But I worked there with Bob and Bob Burl in the Facebook live chat, and that was during the time that Napster was happening in the early 2000s. Remember, Napster came in and changed everything and got Metallica very upset. But that was, the beginning of file sharing, and which isn't a term anyone uses anymore. But at the time, it was file sharing, and that's how you could get music for free. You go to Napster, and people are sharing these files, and that was the beginning of a massive shift, a sea change, if you will, in the music industry and how music is consumed. And of course, today we have, iTunes and Spotify and Pandora and all this stuff. But Napster, was where where the beginning of that shift started. And but Bobby B doesn't know this, but he actually indirectly has impacted something that happened on this show, and I'll share what that is in a moment, but let's take this call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
It's Ridley.
Dave Ridley from the Ridley Report. How are you, sir?
Oh, pretty good.
Dave, why don't you do a podcast? Have you ever done a podcast?
I'm sorry, you broke up. Let me step outside.
Oh, my goodness, yes. What do you say we step outside? All right. Anyway, yeah, my question isn't important anyway. No, but how are you, Dave? That's a more important question. How are you? How is Dave Ridley?
Same old, same old.
All right. What's on your mind today, sir?
Well, apparently the New Hampshire, you may have already talked about this, but the New Hampshire Senate has passed what would amount to an income tax.
Are you serious?
Yeah, at least that's what I heard.
Well, when you say what would amount to, so what exactly have you heard? Because this is kind of shocking, actually.
Well, there was some sort of it seemed like an aid to families type thing or whatnot. But the method that it would be funded would come out of paychecks. And I just really don't know. Very many details about it. I'm pretty sure it came up last session, and so this is the second time it's come up. It seemed at that time to be getting more traction than income tax bills normally do in New Hampshire, but it didn't pass. I don't think it got through any of the bodies of the legislature. But like I said, the fact that it would have gotten through the Senate at all would be I've never heard of an income tax getting through any branch of government
right
in New Hampshire, but maybe I just haven't heard.
But they were always trying, though, and it always amazes me. And I didn't, because I focus more on national politics than anything. But, some years ago when I started, like I used to be on a TV show, a weekly TV show, Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, that focused mostly on New Hampshire politics. And one of the things that I learned doing that show that really surprised me. Oh, hello to Matt Bover, who joins us in the Facebook live chat. Hi, Matt. One of the things, I used to be in a band with Matt, one of the things that really surprised me as I learned more about New Hampshire politics is that there's always people trying, as politically suicidal as one would think it would be. There's always people who are trying to get through some sort of statewide income tax in New Hampshire. And it's not something that I would have thought ever happened, or would happen, rather. But it also sounds like, I'd like to find out more about exactly what this is. But I mean, ultimately, though, whatever they might have passed in the Senate, Sununu's not going to sign it, certainly.
Well, yeah, I sent him an email today, asking him to veto it. And I never lobby, generally because it's like, it's not consistent with the idea of ambush interviewing politicians on camera, right? The two don't mix very well.
Yeah.
But I'm that guy that ambush interviewed you with a camera and asked you all these nasty questions the other day. I just like to urge that you vote against, vote my way on something. It doesn't really add up. But
right.
It's still, sometimes it's an important enough issue to be worth doing.
Yeah, of course. Does that ever happen, by the way? Like, if you ever, when you do one of your, and just to clarify for those who don't know, I mean, these ambush interviews that you refer to, when you kind of put somebody on the spot and ask them these questions, and maybe they don't want to answer, but, well, of course, politicians never want to answer whatever questions they were asked. They only want to answer whatever question they wish had been asked. But does that ever happen to you where you approach somebody and they remember you and they go, no, I remember you from before, and they kind of run the other way?
Oh yeah, I'm a fairly well-known face at the State House. I'm not there that much, but
right.
I think people watch the videos. So there was one time where I walked up to someone, I knew his name, I knew what he looked like, but I'd never met him before. And before I got 4 words out of my mouth, he said, "Get away from me, Ridley."
But he called you by name. That's funny. So he definitely remembered you.
He wasn't joking. He was angry.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I had the nerve to even be standing in the hallway of one of those government buildings.
Yeah. And he did he kind of run? Or granted, given the median age of our New Hampshire state legislature, he probably couldn't run. Did he walk away at a brisk pace?
He just walked away. But a few months later, I did the same thing. I walked up to him and asked him a question. Instead, he just stopped and answered it, and he was just like nothing had ever happened.
Oh, no kidding. Well, again, given the median age of our New Hampshire state legislature, he might not have remembered you from before. He might have a memory that only works part of the time.
Anything's possible.
Yes, it certainly is. It certainly is. Well.
But we got to watch them. It seems like things get through sometimes, and you don't even know that they were submitted, and they're already a law, right? Even someone like me who pays pretty close attention, and so I thought it alerts the public. Possible income tax.
Yeah, but
there's still time to stop it.
Yeah, and but Sununu will veto it. I mean, I don't mean if it gets that far. I don't mean to sound. I don't want to sound complacent because I always say that apathy is the greatest threat to our liberty. But I've been thinking about making T-shirts with that, actually. That's trademarked, but no, not really. But I can't imagine a Republican governor signing that. But even I can't even imagine a Democratic governor signing that in this state. That just seems so politically suicidal to me. But they're always trying.
Now that you mentioned it, the Democrat governor before last did actually sign the pledge, or pledged not to ever, vote for a general sales or income tax.
John Lynch, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it would be kind of surprising.
Wait, Lyncher has
as much of a letdown as Sununu generally is. I would be kind of surprised if he signed this.
Right. Why? By the way, I'm curious. Why is Sununu a letdown to you? I mean, I can kind of guess, but why is he? How has he disappointed you?
The thing that really angered me the most was, after all his conciliatory comments about marijuana users, he announced, I guess, this particular this year, I guess, that one of his priorities, maybe this session, one of his priorities now that he's been reelected is to try and stop any kind of marijuana legalization. And to me, that was kind of, I know technically he was talking about decriminalization before, but just the fact that he would turn so far against people and want so many arrests to continue happening.
Right.
That really maybe I'm being too litmus here, but I'm not even a marijuana smoker. I'm the last person in New Hampshire who hasn't tried it yet. and it's just but this principle of being able to put what you want in your body, especially if it's not particularly harmful,
right,
is just so important. And that's what's got me angry. And just he's such an establishment figure. I mean, just look at his last name, right?
Right. Although, to be fair, Dave, he is not his father ideologically. I mean, his father's very conservative, and Sununu, I mean, he's a Republican, but I wouldn't describe him. I mean, he's more of a northeastern Republican. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe.
To me, I mean, he seems pretty moderate, like a pretty moderate guy. But I mean, not as moderate. When I say northeastern Republican, I don't mean like Charlie Baker, who's the most popular governor in the country in Massachusetts. I mean, that's a true liberal to moderate Republican. I'm not necessarily putting Sununu in that category, but compared to his dad, I mean, he's not his dad, but he is part of the establishment, certainly. But I hope, I mean, but he also, though, on the cannabis issue, he had previously said he wouldn't support even decrim, right? And then he changed his mind. So maybe he'll change his mind on legalization if he's forced.
I think he initially, when he was running for office, I think he indicated some support, some degree of support for decrim.
Did he?
And so I'm not saying he went back on his word.
Yeah.
Going back on your word would be a much better thing to do than what is actually being done.
Well, it depends on the issue,
harming hundreds of New Hampshire residents every month by ruining their lives over this
right.
plant.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, I'd like to do nationally. I'd like to do what Portugal did, and I don't know if you heard earlier in the show, Dave, but I got a call from Mike Doyle, who calls the show frequently, and I don't know, maybe Mike doesn't listen often enough, didn't realize my position on that, but I'd like to do the Portugal thing and at the very least decriminalize all hard drugs and certainly go full legal on cannabis. And he was quite shocked by that, and I'm like, well, dude, that's always been my position. I mean, there's really nothing new there, and I assume, I mean, you're more libertarian than I am. Certainly, you'd probably agree with that, or actually, you'd probably want to go full legal on everything. I would think, right, Dave?
Well, it's like anything else. Any solution is okay with me as long as it doesn't involve harming bystanders.
Right.
Basically, that's the simple way to put it. I mean, maybe you come up with an exception here or there, but when you have, even when murder is illegal under the current system, well, yeah, we want to stop murder, we want to prevent murder and punish murder and stuff like that. That's great to do that, but should you actually deputize the average bystander to help you with that project and force them to help you with that project? I don't think so.
Right. I mean, I certainly don't want anyone asking me to help solve a murder. I got things to do.
Well, I mean, if someone that will ask me to, I might say yes, but let me make the choice.
I would have questions. I would want to know the quality of the individual who was killed. Is it someone that I think I might have gotten along with? I'm kidding, of course. But, yeah. Oh, by the way, Dave, I have another question for you. Because I've been surprised by this in talking to some people who I would not expect to take the position on this that they do. But I want to ask you, how do you feel about the border situation?
Oh, well, it's like anything else. There may be an actual problem down there. Maybe the problem is the wall. Maybe the problem is people coming across the wall that you don't want in the area. Whatever the problem is, your solution is fine with me as long as it doesn't involve, again, hurting bystanders.
Mm-hmm.
So the Trump solution to whatever's going on down there is to come to the bystander, the taxpayer, and make them underwrite this wall. And I think if you want a wall, you build one. You don't make your neighbor build one. You don't make your neighbor pay, Trump to build one.
Our neighbor being taxpayers in this case, or our neighbor being Mexico?
taxpayers.
Right,
And that's why. So there are people who are doing this. This is not pie in the sky talk. There are people who are privately funding walls along the border in areas. I guess that there's some kind of Kickstarter or something like that.
There was. I think
that's a better solution than
I think it
than
came
what
down.
Trump is doing, because he's making taxpayers underwrite it.
That's true. No, I mean, I personally, I had no problem. I think it was a GoFundMe actually, but I think it got taken down and everyone got refunded, if I remember correctly. But what I said about that is, hey, if there's people who think this is so important, who want to step up and pay for it, sure, let them pay for it. Let them, that money can go into the Treasury or whatever, and maybe it'll make its way to building this wall they wanted. Maybe it won't, because that doesn't always end up happening. Money doesn't always go where it's supposed to go with our government. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of my attitude about it. I've just been really surprised. And you've been generous with your time, Dave. I'll let you go in a minute, but I want to get your perspective on kind of a connected thing. I've just been really surprised over the course of the Trump presidency and actually going back to his candidacy, how many libertarians are pro-Trump. Because to me, there's not much libertarian about Donald Trump, and yet there are a lot of pro-Trump libertarians. It's to me, it's odd.
Well, you can't really be both. However, having said that, he is at least, there's a degree of genuineness, and like when someone tells you they're going to kill you, they're probably not, like you've seen that video where he sort of threatened the reporters that were asking him questions. He didn't actually say he was going to kill them, but he kind of advocated that they be killed or something like that. And when someone says things like that, well, they're at least stabbing you in the front, right? And he's a very disruptive force, and it's good to have a disruptive force in Washington, because Washington is it's like if you compare the planet Neptune to the planet Jupiter, right? Like Neptune does not have a I think it's either Neptune or Uranus, does not have an unstable atmosphere. It has a pretty stable atmosphere. So the winds get up to 1,000 miles an hour because there's no conflict in the atmosphere.
Okay.
But in Jupiter has a turbulent atmosphere, so the winds are pretty mild in comparison. And so you don't want something like Washington is like a gas giant, right? You don't want it to have the high winds. You want things to happen to sort of slow it down.
Yeah. I mean that is part of why when I hear people talk about why they voted for Trump, that is one of the things I hear. They wanted a disruptor, but what if the disruption does more harm than good?
It could, but he's America's Slobodan Milosevic in terms of the way he talks in a lot of ways. Although Milosevic was a little more eloquent and he spoke great English, but he's still like in terms of like sort of fanning the fires. And sort of somebody coming into power who actually says what he's thinking to some extent. After all these years of sort of suppressed, quiet tones and carefully worded this and that, he comes along and when he says these things, it pours the fuel on the fires of conflict. But I don't know. It's with the government is good. The best you can get from the federal government is gridlock. And if you look at the Clinton administration years and the Eisenhower years, those were some of the best times. The 50s and the 90s were some of the best times in American history for Americans anyway. And if there really is enough gridlock between Trump and the CIA, what I call the CIA faction, the Democrats. Yeah. If there's enough friction between them and gridlock, but they don't, no one ever starts shooting, then it's fine. It's as good as it gets.
Right. Yeah. No, I was just curious to get your perspective on that, because that's something we've never really discussed. But man, there's a lot of libertarians who really love Trump, and it's kind of it's like, wow, okay. And love the idea of a border, by the way, and that's remarkable to me. But anyway, Dave, well, thank you so much. And anything you want to mention about the Ridley Report before we let you go, or anything to plug? Obviously, I want you to plug the Ridley Report, but I don't know if you have anything specific on there, too, that you want us to know about.
Well, I'll take my time instead to say that walls don't work very well because Berlin Wall, Maginot Line, Great Wall, this will be just like those.
Right. All right, Dave. Well, go ahead and plug the Ridley Report, too.
RidleyReport.com.
I wasn't putting you on a timer. All right, my friend. As always, I appreciate the call, and we'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, Dave. You got it, brother. Take care. All right, the great Dave Ridley from the Ridley Report. Always nice to hear from Dave. We're going to take a break in a minute because we're well past the top of the hour, but I do want to finish. Hopefully, Bob is still listening. So, Bob Burl in the Facebook live chat. Oh, also hello to Christian Cunard, who just joined us. And I think I mentioned Matt Bover. Matt Bover and I used to be in a band called My Life Crisis. And around that same time period in my life, so I worked with Bob Burl, also known as Bobby B. Now, some of you will remember there was this whole big bit of a couple of months ago anyway, I think it was a couple of months. Time, it all blurs together for me. Where my alter ego came out and recorded a couple of diss tracks. Now, without rehashing all of that, because if you missed out on that whole saga, then it's a lot to recount. But my hip hop alter ego, I went with the name M Sizzle. I got that from Bobby B, whom I used to work with at Strawberries back in the early 2000s, and he's the one who gave me that name because he kind of had like nicknames for everybody. And his nickname for me started as MC because those are my initials. So instead of calling me Matt, he'd call me MC. And then over time, MC kind of evolved into M Sizzle. And so that's where I got the name M Sizzle. So there you go. So for all of you who don't like M Sizzle, you can blame Bobby B for that. Because not everyone enjoyed the bit. I certainly enjoyed it, though. It was fun to explore that side of me. But anyway, all right, let's take a break because we are well past the top of the hour. You're listening to Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live on WMNH 95.3 FM, emanating from glorious downtown Manchester, New Hampshire. And I think this is apropos for a lot of what we've been talking about. This is called Build That Wall. Though I think these guys mean it a bit ironically. This is by the Cashbox Kings. Fred Bonig from the Daily Ripple had sent me the song the other day, and I never did get to playing it, but then I listened to it today. I played it, and I was like, oh, I have to play this. This is great. So here it is. This is Build That Wall by Cashbox Kings, and we will be back with more Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live. Don't go away.
Tell by your last name, this country means more to me than it does to you. We need to get back to that space where people knew their place. And when we're done with that, let's go and build that wall. Build the wall. Take your science and your facts. You can blow them out your ass. 'Cause the unexamined life is where it's at. Climate change ain't all that bad. You know it's just a passing fad. Come on now, you will see, let's build that wall. Build the wall. Build the wall. Yeah, build the wall. Build the wall. Mistreat people with black skin, but most of all, we're gonna go lead the fight to say the red, blue, and white. Come on now, you will see, let's build that wall. Come on now, you will see, let's build that wall. Come on now, you will see. Let's build that wall. Build that wall. Oh man, come on, go build that wall.
I'm watching Fox News in the morning. Hope my approval rate will climb. If news is bitter, I'll take to Twitter. Just get me my executive time. They tried to brief me just this morning. Get lost, you stupid punks, I chimed. You must excuse me, briefings confuse me, and hamper my executive time. Bring me my TV and my remote. Time for a Big Mac and a root beer float. I'm getting bronzed again this morning. Into the tanning bed I'll climb. Rome may be burning. Time for my turning. Just give me my executive time. I called up Hannity this morning. Told him to bump me up in prime. Say that I'm working, although I'm here shirking. I have to have executive time. I talk to Putin every morning. Love how he organizes crime. He's such a viper. Nurse, change my diaper and give me my executive time. The house has color, so I'm a wreck. And Robert Mueller's breathing down my neck. I can avoid my job for hours. Golf carting on the country's dime. I find absentia hides my dementia. So get me my exec. I really am a wreck. For God's sake, get me my executive time.
U.S. lawmakers have a bone to pick with Facebook over allegations that the social media giant revealed users' sensitive health information in so-called closed groups. On Tuesday, leaders of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce sent a letter to Facebook chairman and CEO Mark Zuckerberg demanding a briefing about the accusations. Here's what happened. A security researcher and health advocates recently filed a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission that said Facebook deceptively solicited patients to share personal health information in closed groups on the site. According to the complaint, Facebook then leaked that data to the public. Now the Energy and Commerce Committee is looking into whether Facebook potentially misled users into joining those closed groups and revealing more information than they otherwise would have. Last week, the Washington Post reported the FTC and Facebook are negotiating over a record-setting fine for violating users' privacy. Both sides are working out a deal but refuse to elaborate on the private discussions.
And we will then be sued, and they will sue us in the Ninth Circuit, even though it shouldn't be there. And we will possibly get a bad ruling, and then we'll get another bad ruling, and then we'll end up in the Supreme Court, and hopefully we'll get a fair shake, and we'll win in the Supreme Court. Just like the ban, they sued us in the Ninth Circuit, and we lost, and then we lost in the appellate division, and then we went to the Supreme Court, and we won.
You're listening to hour number 2 of Matt Connarton Unleashed. And, oh, geez, I got to snap out of that. Wow. I sound like an idiot talking like that. Or a 5-year-old. Anyway, yes, it is hour number 2, well into hour number 2 of Matt Connarton Unleashed in the afternoon, live on WMNH 95.3 FM, emanating from downtown Manchester. Of course, we're on WMNHradio.org online, so you can listen to us anywhere. You can also find WMNH on the TuneIn app, by the way. So you can take us wherever you go on your mobile device pretty easily and effortlessly. We're on Channel 97 Comcast if you're in Manchester, and, of course, on Facebook via Facebook Live on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. I did see Chris Rose in there earlier, by the way. I think I forgot to mention Chris. Let's see. So we've got, well, there's quite a few different things going on, as always seems to be the case. Let's, I do want to hit this Michael Flynn thing. Michael Flynn back in the news, one of the people who's been swept up and indicted and in all kinds of trouble in the Mueller probe, which I know some, of course, like to consider a witch hunt.
One of these witch hunts where you just walk out of your front door and all the witches are just landing in your front lawn.
Right there in the yard.
Yes, we're up to somewhere between 30 and 40 folks who've been indicted, charged and indicted for something in this alleged witch hunt. Anyway, Michael Flynn, who, remember, as his lawyers had argued, he didn't know that he was lying, or he didn't know that it was not okay to lie to the FBI because no one had reminded him, or then he wasn't sure that he was actually lying and all this and that. Anyway, that Michael Flynn, former General Michael Flynn, in a lot of trouble. Anyway, so here's the newest on Michael Flynn. Reuters is reporting that Trump aides ignored legal warnings in pushing reactor plan, according to a Democratic report. You know, now that the Democrats are in control of the House, we have all these investigations going on. I think in the end, the Trump administration might very well be the most investigated administration in American history. It says here, top White House aides ignored repeated warnings they could be breaking the law. It's difficult for me to read that phrase without breaking the law by Judas Priest popping into my head. I might have to play that at the end of the show today. I haven't heard that in a while. Breaking the law as they worked with former U.S. officials and a close friend of President Donald Trump to advance a multi-billion-dollar plan to build nuclear reactors in the Middle East, Democratic lawmakers alleged in a report released Tuesday. Before I go any further, let me just say this. Nuclear reactors in the Middle East, what could go wrong? Just want to throw that out there. The House of Representatives Oversight Committee report said former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and 2 top aides promoted the plan with Tom Barrack, the chairman of Trump's inaugural committee, and a consortium of, is it consortium or consortium? I've heard it pronounced both ways. And I don't know if y'all have noticed, sometimes I'm a bit indecisive in terms of how to pronounce things, certain words, you know, like, is it Iran? Is it Iran? Is it potato or potato? I'm kidding, of course. It's obviously potato, as any normal person would say. Anyway, a consortium, we'll go with that, consortium of U.S. firms led by retired military commanders and former White House officials. The effort, the report said, began before Trump took office and continued after his inauguration in January of 2017, despite National Security Council staff warnings that a proposed transfer of U.S. nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia was being fast-tracked around a mandatory approval process in possible breach of the Atomic Energy Act. John Eisenberg, the top NSC lawyer, is it lawyer or lawyer? Okay, now I'm just being silly. Ignore me. Well, don't ignore me. You can continue to listen to the show. I won't do that anymore. John Eisenberg, a top NSC lawyer, had ordered the work halted because of concerns that Flynn could be breaking a conflict of interest law as he advised the consortium while serving on Trump's campaign and transition team, said the report, which is based on documents and whistleblower accounts. Administration support for the nuclear project, however, appears to have continued to the present, with Trump meeting consortium representatives in the Oval Office last week, the committee report said. The report also said, quote, the committee is now launching an investigation to determine whether the actions being pursued by the Trump administration are in the national security interests of the United States, or rather serve those who stand to gain financially, unquote. The report, compiled by the Democratic staff of the panel chaired by Representative Elijah Cummings, comes as Democrats expand inquiries into alleged administration wrongdoing after winning a majority in the House in the November elections. The nuclear project is being promoted by IP3 International, a consortium of U.S. technology firms founded by retired Navy Rear Admiral Michael Hewitt, retired Army General John Keane, and Robert McFarlane, there's a familiar name, a former national security advisor to President Ronald Reagan. The board includes former senior U.S. civilian and military officials. By the way, we'll come back to that. Actually, we'll finish this part, and then we'll come back to that thing I wanted to mention. The report said the companies include reactor manufacturer Westinghouse, which emerged from Chapter 11 bankruptcy last year. The White House plan, Flynn and IP3 had no immediate response to the report. A spokesman for Barrick said in an email that the longtime Trump friend and CEO of Colony Capital, a private equity firm, was not contacted prior to the report's release, was reviewing the document, and stands ready to cooperate with the committee. Now, the thing that I wanted to mention, and there's more to this, again, this is from Reuters, talking about this consortium of firms and tech companies and weapons manufacturers. I just want to, I know I've beaten this to death in the past, but yeah, I know we're always picking up new listeners. I just want to remind people that these companies and weapons manufacturers specifically, by the way, and these are tech companies, I guess, in this consortium, but we can also talk about weapons manufacturers when we talk about this. Understand that very often they have these boards of people who used to work in the government. You know, if you used to be an office holder, you know, a congressman, a senator, etc., very often after your career is over, after you are no longer in that elected office, you will move on to work as a lobbyist or sit on a board of some company or whomever. Whomever hires you to use your quote-unquote experience, which really just means to use your influence to help further their cause, right? But it's not just people who hold office. I mean, you know, being a politician is a great way to, if you want a career where you can literally fail upward, politics is a great career to get into because you can hold office, lose an election, but get snatched up by some company that's going to pay you 10 times what you were making. That happened to Eric Cantor. Remember Eric Cantor? He got primaried by that Tea Party guy in Virginia, Dave Bratt. And, you know, shed no tears for Eric Cantor. He was already a multimillionaire as a senator, but then he went on to make, like, literally, I think 5 times as much working as a lobbyist. So you can fail upward in politics. This also holds for, you know, people who used to serve in presidential administrations, very often retired military, retired generals, or retired colonels like Jack Jacobs comes to mind. They fail upward very often in a couple of, well, not fail upward in their case. They retire from the military, right? But they're done in the military, so then what do they go and do? Well, they still have careers. They go and they sit on these boards. And what else do they do while they're sitting on these boards? They also spend a lot of time going on television. And the reason I bring this up is I just want to remind everybody, because the mainstream media, big media, never tells you when they're interviewing these people, like whether it's, you know, Tucker Carlson on Fox or Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, when they bring on these people to talk about foreign policy and what's going on in the world and talk about conflict and talk about war, they never tell you, oh, by the way, this is, you know, retired Colonel Jack Jacobs or retired General Barry McCaffrey. And by the way, just in full disclosure, he now sits on the board of Raytheon, right? Or he now sits on the board of UBS or whatever it is. They never tell you that. But they should tell you that because it's a business. War is a business. Foreign policy itself is a business. We're supposed to believe it's all about defending the country. It's not. It's a business. And big media is part of that. That's why big media tends to be pro-war. So you have these people who go on these shows while sitting on these boards and advocate. They go on these shows and they advocate for policies and for policy positions that will directly benefit the very companies that they sit on the boards of. But there's no disclosure of that ever. And that's part of how big media has managed to convince this country, a large swath of it, that war itself is pretty awesome and cool, right? You know, between that and the video games that glorify war, etc., etc. In reality, it's a business. War is a racket. There's a great, I forget the name of the author. There's a book that people keep telling me I need to read. I need to get to it one of these days, called War is a Racket. Hopwood has mentioned it to me. I forget the name of the author. You know, that talks about this in depth. Kind of a taboo subject, actually. You're not really supposed to talk about that. You're supposed to pretend that it's all about defending the country and rah, 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 USA. It's really not. But so, you know, as we're going through this article and we're seeing all these names of all these people who sit on all these boards, and then you also see them out there on television giving speeches, whatever it may be. Now you're going to see these same people, this same class of people coming out and beginning to endorse candidates, right? That's another thing that goes on. Because it's all about, we're a war-based economy. It's our greatest export. What are we better at than war? You know, it's not, what, you think you think we're bad at war because we get bogged down in certain places because we've been in Afghanistan that's our longest war now. We've been in Afghanistan almost 2 decades. So that must mean we're bad at war, right? No, it means we're very, very good at it. Because we know how to make sure the product, we keep producing this product, which is war. And this is why the mainstream media, they go nuts when Trump, and I'm very critical of Trump. If you're a regular listener, you know. But a broken clock is right twice a day. When he talks about wanting to get out of Syria, when he talks about drawing down in Afghanistan, I'm with him on that. But in the mainstream media, they go nuts. Even on the so-called liberal network of MSNBC, I thought liberals were supposed to be anti-war. I've never seen so many pro-war liberals in my life as I do on MSNBC. I like Rachel Maddow, but she's pretty pro-war as far as I can tell. That seems to be her position. And just because it's a so-called liberal network doesn't mean you can step out of line. I mean, this was years ago, right? This was back, wow, this was almost 2 decades ago. But this happened on MSNBC when they had Phil Donahue. Phil Donahue was their highest-rated show. And he took publicly an anti-war position. He didn't agree with going into Iraq. There's a clip you can find online on YouTube. If you go on YouTube and you just type in Chris Matthews, Phil Donahue, this will be the first thing that comes up, a conversation that they had on Phil Donahue's show. Chris Matthews, of course, host of Hardball, and I like Chris Matthews, but he was on that show taking the pro-war position, Donahue taking the anti-war position. They didn't really get into an argument. I wouldn't call it an argument. Some people called it an argument, but it was a pretty passionate discussion. Guess who had the highest-rated show at the time on MSNBC? And guess who MSNBC inexplicably fired anyway? The guy who took the anti-war position. Because it was right after, well, not right after, but shortly after 9/11, we were already in Afghanistan. Now we're ramping up to go into Iraq. Chris Matthews later became opposed to the Iraq War. He hadn't figured it out yet. The guy who figured it out, the guy who had the highest rated show on MSNBC, you can't be talking this anti-war stuff, and they fired Donahue. He was out. So, just try to be aware, because they'll never tell you. They'll never tell you on the air that these people sit on these boards. But when you're watching these shows and you hear someone taking these positions who is a former government employee who formerly held some sort of office, you might want to take 2 seconds and Google them and just see, what do they do now? What is their dog in the fight? Oh, Fred posted a link. Fred Bonig from thedailyripple.org posted a link in the Facebook live chat. So for anyone who wants to get this, it's the Amazon link. War is a Racket, the anti-war classic by America's most decorated soldier. And this is, Smedley Butler. See, now that I see the name in front of me, it's like, geez, how could I forget a name like that? Smedley Butler. How many Smedleys have you met in your life? I have met none. But, here, I'll read the description quickly. It's worth reading. Unique among the high-ranking military officers of the U.S. and the world, I do not know of any other high-ranking military officer of the U.S. or the world who has spoken or written such more important truths and facts about the nature and causes of war. General Butler wrote these in simple and direct language that everyone can understand. His honesty, care for society, humanity, and justice for all, and profound insights are self-evident in his writing. Moreover, it is even much more relevant now than it was when it was written in 1935. War is a Racket is the title of 2 works, a speech and a booklet by retired U.S. Marine Corps Major General and 2-time Medal of Honor recipient Smedley D. Butler. So it goes on. It's lengthy, but you get the idea. But that is a book that I need to read. Thank you, Fred, for sharing that in there. Because it's true. It's a business. All right, so getting back to this, and then, wow, we're already running out of time. Actually, let's, here, there's not too much left of this article. We'll wrap up with the General Flynn thing, because I do have something else I really want to get to. So it says, working with the U.S. government, the consortium would build dozens of power reactors in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and other U.S. Arab allies, according to the IP3 website. In doing so, the project would help restore U.S. influence in the Middle East while boosting regional economic and political stability, according to the site. Flynn, a retired Army general, promoted the plan on 2 2015 trips to Saudi Arabia and listed himself on government documents as an IP3 advisor during a period in 2016 while he was working for Trump's campaign and transition, the report said. Oh, good on him. He remembered to actually put his name on something as an advisor for someone with our government. Because I don't know if y'all realize this, but Michael Flynn doesn't always remember to do that kind of thing. But he remembered that time, at least. That's great. Flynn's work on the nuclear plan was thoroughly reviewed by special counsel Robert Mueller, who never indicated it was legally problematic, a person familiar with the matter said. Flynn was charged in December of 2017 with lying to the FBI agents about his contacts with the Russian ambassador and is cooperating with Mueller's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. A spokesman for Mueller declined to comment. Barrick was represented in the plan, the report said, by the then head of the firm's Washington office, Rick Gates. We'll remember, you might remember Rick Gates, of course, from his association with Mr. Manafort. Rick Gates, a former political consultant and Trump's deputy campaign manager. Gates pleaded guilty last year to financial fraud and lying to the FBI and also is now cooperating with Mueller. Documents appended to the report included a draft presidential memorandum appointing Barrick as a special envoy to oversee implementation of the project that McFarland sent to Flynn and his then deputy K.T. McFarland on January 28, 2017. K.T. McFarland, yes, another familiar name. She had a she used to be on Fox as some sort of foreign policy expert, but she also there was a radio show that she was on quite a bit. Might have been the John Batchelor show. John Batchelor's a conservative, but I like his show. He's a nationally syndicated guy. If you've never heard him, he's conservative, but he's not overtly conservative in the sense that he's not ideologically pushing any kind of positions or anything. It's a very sort of mature sort of, he talks to people about history and technology, and it's very different from really anything else on conservative talk radio. I recommend it if you've never heard it. Let's see. He doesn't take calls, and he doesn't sit there and talk about Hillary's emails and all that. He does it's just a really interesting show, and he's it ain't Rush Limbaugh. I'll just put it that way. All right. Also included in the committee, no offense if you like Rush Limbaugh, I'm just saying, John Batchelor show, nothing like Rush Limbaugh or Hannity or any of these people. All right. Also included in the committee's report was a document authored by Barrick titled The Trump Middle East Marshall Plan that promoted the plan and was sent to NSC staff on March 28, 2017 by IP3 board member Francis Fragos Townsend, who served as Homeland Security Advisor to President George W. Bush. A current senior administration official was among the unnamed whistleblowers who came forward, quote, with significant concerns about the potential procedural and legal violations connected with rushing through a plan to transfer nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia. The whistleblowers, it said, also warned about political appointees ignoring the advice of, quote, top ethics advisors at the White House who repeatedly and unsuccessfully ordered senior Trump administration officials to halt their efforts, unquote. In addition to McFarland, Flynn's top Middle East advisor, Derek Harvey, played a key role in promoting the plan in the White House, doing so despite warnings of possible ethics and criminal law violations, the report said. By the way, didn't I hesitate to say this because I don't remember the details. I don't want to smear anybody, but didn't KT McFarland also get into some kind of trouble and then she had to resign? Did she resign at the same time Flynn resigned? There was something she had done. Like, I don't think she was indicted for anything, right? But Fred will know. Fred, if you're still there. I don't think she was indicted for anything, but I think there was something questionable that she had done where she also had to resign. Fred did share something else. This computer's slow to load sometimes, but we'll see what this is. Looks like it might be a song. Fred always sends really good stuff. I want to get into this other thing as I keep thinking that this is about to load. It's a song, No Child of Mine by Truck Stop Honeymoon. Huh, sounds interesting. I'll play it. I'll end the show with it. No, I trust Fred. Fred's a radio guy, so I trust him. He always sends me good stuff. I want to get into, and this is a delicate topic because people will misunderstand me. But I gotta. It relates sort of to this Jussie Smollett. Am I saying his name correctly? The actor from Empire who claimed that he was attacked, and now it looks like he made the whole thing up and all this. Actually, we have a call. Let me grab this call, and then we'll get into this other thing. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this? Hello?
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 Hey, did you mention Truck Stop Women?
Truck Stop Women?
Yeah, I was listening. I just came out of it's freezing, monkey's breast, what's could be frozen off, and I turned on the radio, and you were talking about truck stop women?
Yes. Are you near a truck stop right now?
No, unfortunately.
Oh, you're missing out.
I wanted to share a memory of the 2012 election.
Does it involve a truck stop?
Well, it was up at St. Anselm's, and I was, covering Mitt Romney, who was the Republican nominee, with the guy from the Moxie can, and he's running for Beep. And, you know, my mother was a Catholic. I'm not. I take her up there.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, she had Alzheimer's, the last stage. There's nothing, no accommodations at all for people with disabilities. They're sticking people with wheelchairs, like, under the bleachers and stuff. It's, like, ridiculous. And, but, you know, so you're sitting there with Catholic priests with big smiles on their faces, and they got those long dresses. What do they call them, soutane or something?
Oh, I don't know. I try not to even contemplate that.
And, you know, Ma's all upset because, you know, she's 87 years old. And, my God, the music they had, that blasting was all this country music. Ever since that damn George H.W. Bush, who my mother hated, lifelong Republican from Tom Dewey, up until Bill Clinton converted her to the colors.
Oh.
And he lived in Kennebunkport, which they closed down the road that we always took because, you know, my Uncle Harold had a place up there. But
Uncle Harold.
But that's beside the story. But, you know, ever since George H.W. Bush, you've got to prove you're like a regular guy if you're a Republican. So it's going to NASCAR events, you know, that's New Hampshire, and listening to country music. And so here we are, sitting next to a priest. I did finagle a good seat for Ma because, you know, I'm kind of an SOB. And
oh, you have good
I have my
negotiating skills, like our president.
And all of a sudden, the song's bleating out. Some guys at the truck stop, and some truck stop woman, he's finagled her, just like I finagled a seat for Ma.
Oh, my goodness.
Finagled her into the cab of his truck, and he's giving her, you know, what do you call it? Well, Kirby Puckett was a Brooklyn Dodgers pitcher, and he wrote a book called The High Hard One. You know, a fastball inside. But
I thought that meant something else. So I bet if I went to
you are
UrbanDictionary.com and looked that up, it'd say
we
something else.
got a little lag here.
Yes, go ahead.
And they're singing about truck stop women. Oh, my God. And this is absolutely true. Oh, can you tell the folks tonight to Ward 13 with John Hopwood? We're having Dr. Jeff Cassell on. I don't know who the we is, but, you know, I am related to royalty. Bye.
Yes, bye, John. All right. You tune into Ward 13 with John Hopwood tonight at 7 p.m. on Channel 23, locally here in Manchester. And, of course, you can watch it online at manchestertv.org. So always nice to always enjoy seeing Dr. Jeff Cassell on television. I used to enjoy seeing him here on the radio, but he doesn't come to the radio studio anymore. And I remember, too, by the way, I remember him saying the reason he hadn't been in was because he needed a haircut. He hadn't been to the barber. And yet he can go on television with apparently his mussy hair. He just wears a hat anyway. He kind of dresses like Fidel Castro, which is odd because there's nothing Fidel Castro about Dr. Jeff Cassell. But anyway, he hangs around with that Q guy, though. They even talk alike. It's very, very disconcerting. Oh, Fred put something in the Facebook live chat about KT McFarland. Okay. Because I was trying to remember what the deal was with her or what the dizzle was with her. I think that's what the young people say now, right? They say dizzle or something. It's very strange. Young people are odd. Okay, Fred wrote, on December 1st, Robert Mueller's special counsel investigation named McFarland as one of the people involved with Michael Flynn, her former supervisor, and Jared Kushner in developments leading up to Flynn's guilty plea to lying to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And again, I'll just remind everyone, in Flynn's defense, no one bothered to remind him that you can't lie to the FBI, apparently. So, you know, what can you do? Anyway, in particular, Kushner and McFarland reportedly briefed Flynn on what to say about U.S. sanctions against Russia. The next day, an email McFarland wrote during the transition surfaced. It read, quote, if there is a tit-for-tat escalation, Trump will have difficulty improving Russian relations with Russia, which has just thrown USA election to him, unquote. After talking to Kislyak, Flynn informed McFarland of the contents of the conversation, who in truth passed on the information to one of her colleagues. Okay. Who in turn, rather, passed on the information to one of her colleagues. All right. There you go. Thank you, Fred. So the thing that I wanted to, it's a big subject to get into, actually, because we're almost out of time. Should we do something else and maybe save this for tomorrow? No, we'll do it now. I can do this quickly. I don't like to save things for tomorrow because tomorrow may never come. There's no guarantee of tomorrow. No, it isn't even that. It's that, tomorrow, by the way the world works now, that every day there's 10 more different things that happen. Tomorrow we'll get here and there will have been 10 more different things to talk about. No, quickly. So, I didn't hang up the phone. Although we will keep the phone line open, of course, even though I'm going to try to be quick and succinct with this. 603-250-6007. But, this Jussie, Jussie, Jussie Smollett, the guy from Empire, he claimed to have been attacked by the guys in the MAGA hats, and they put a noose around his neck and all this. And apparently now it turns out the whole thing was a hoax. I don't think anyone's really defending him at this point. I think everyone's kind of like, yeah, it doesn't look like it happened. And those two guys came forward and said, oh, no, he hired us to fake this attack. It kind of I'm wanting to be very, very careful about how I say this because people in the media, of course, were very quick to believe his story and whatnot, and are seeming somewhat frustrated, many of them, at having to say, now, okay, well, maybe it didn't actually happen. Now, what this kind of relates to, and it won't sound connected initially until I explain why, because the way my brain works, what the connection is here. So I saw this. Now, I didn't have a chance to listen to this yet. I'm going to try to listen to it tonight, but it looks like it's a couple hours long. Laura Logan was on a podcast, and you might remember her. She used to work for CBS News, and if I'm not mistaken, she's the correspondent who actually was the victim of a terrible rape while overseas in the Middle East. A really terrible thing that happened to her. Really heartbreaking. But, Heidi Hamer in the Facebook Live chat is asking, where's Hoppy? He just called in. He's looking for a truck stop woman to shack up with, I think. But Laura Logan was on this podcast and talking about how her belief is that the media, not just in the United States, but around the world, is mostly liberal. And here's what she said. She said, visually, anyone who's ever been to Israel and been to the Wailing Wall has seen that the women have this tiny little spot in front of the wall to pray, and the rest of the wall is for the men. To me, that's a great representation of the American media, is that it's in this tiny corner where the women pray. You've got Breitbart and Fox News and a few others, and from there on you have CBS, ABC, NBC, Huffington Post, Politico, whatever, right? All of them. And that's a problem for me because even if it was reversed, if it was mostly on the right, that would also be a problem for me. My experience has been that the more opinions you have, the more ways you look at everything in life. So she goes on to say this, talking about bias in the media. She says, that's not journalism, that's blank. I can't say that word here. Responsibility for fake news begins with us. We bear some responsibility for that, and we're not taking ownership of that and addressing it. We just want to blame it all on somebody else, unquote. So what she's apparently talking about, we don't have time to go through the whole article. And like I said, I want to listen to the podcast. But she talks about, liberal bias in the media and how it is a real thing and so forth. And the reason I bring this up is I get very frustrated because I do think there is some level of bias in mainstream media. And the reason it bothers me is when I think that sometimes things get distorted, not because it bothers me in this sense. Most of the coverage that I see of Trump, I think is spot on. And I mean, very often you'll see negative coverage of Trump that begins with something as simple as just showing video or playing audio of something he actually said. And it's like, wow, okay. So if you're a longtime listener, I have plenty of my own criticisms of Trump. The problem that I have is, though, sometimes the media does go too far with things, or they kind of go overboard with things, or maybe mischaracterize certain things, and that makes it that much more difficult to be critical of Trump when it's valid. If you do something like for example, when he made the comments about MS-13 gang members, calling them animals, and then many in the media tried to take that and say, oh, look, he's calling immigrants animals. But if you watch the clip, no, he was speaking inartfully and inarticulately, as the only way he knows how to talk, but pretty clear he was speaking specifically about MS-13 gang members. He wasn't calling immigrants in general animals. What that does is, though, when the media does things like that, and there were dissenters. I think Jake Tapper came out and said, no, hang on, everybody, we're getting this wrong. Chuck Todd at MSNBC, I think, came out and said, no. The coverage of what Trump said is not accurate, and we need to correct this. But for the most part, the media runs with it. And the problem I have with that is it makes it that much more difficult. It becomes like the little boy who cried wolf. When everything is negative, and if something isn't necessarily negative, you make it negative. You force it to be a negative. Because personally, I don't think calling MS-13 gang members animals is at all offensive, in my personal opinion. When you force everything to be negative, it undercuts those criticisms of Trump and the administration that are absolutely valid, accurate, and things for which they should be criticized. So the media does this constantly, and Laura Logan, apparently in this podcast, according to this article, she talks about that. And I think it's interesting because it's a frustration that I have. Again, I have all kinds of criticisms of Trump, but I do think there is some bias in the media. I think that's real. I don't think it's anywhere near on the scale Republicans would have you believe it is. I figured out at a pretty young age the Republican attitude is basically anything, anytime, anywhere, under any circumstances that anyone ever says about any Republican in the media is liberal media, or now it's fake news. I remember hearing that. I remember hearing that when I was a kid, when the Iran-Contra thing was going on. I remember hearing people, if it wasn't for that liberal media, we wouldn't even know about this. And it's like, well, don't you want to kind of know about this, right? But I'm going to try to listen to that Laura Logan podcast tonight, and I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Because I do think it's important to have a media that's critical and that's aggressive, but also honest and consistent and such. All right, we're going to wrap up. This is No Child of Mine by Truck Stop Honeymoon. Thank you for sending this, Fred. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll talk at y'all a little bit later.
He's going to kill his son. God told him to. And he would have done, but you ain't God, and I ain't Abraham. No child of mine. Gonna die for an oil man. No child of mine. No child of mine. I will sacrifice. No child